My name is Rajesh. I know Mohit very well, and today I thought I will just like to present some of the more recent large randomized control studies in our field of neonatal medicine. I would like to make this session interactive. So in between, I'll keep on asking questions, and I would love if people were to reply. Doesn't matter if it's a wrong reply. There is nothing like a wrong or the right reply. It all is fine. So I'll start with the first study. Uh, it was published about 2 years ago. Planet is platelet neonatal transfusion study. So the study question was that we want to give prophylactic platelet transfusion. And as you know, we give it very often in non-bleeding patients, especially in premature babies, because we are worried about IVH mainly. So at what level should we give? That was the main study question. And they compared these two thresholds, 25,000 versus 50,000. So are you guys, especially working as neonatal fellows, are you familiar with this PICO?
रुतुल यार रचित बताओ ये हमने डिस्कस किया था जब अभी सीपीजी गाइडलाइंस आई थी ना पब्लिश हुई है तो उसमें ये क्लियरली डिस्कस किया था ये हम लोगों ने
So कोई भी like randomized control trial, basically you want these elements. P for population, किस population को आप study कर रहे हो? I for the intervention, किस intervention को study कर रहे हो? C for control और comparator, कि उस intervention को किस चीज से के साथ, what is your control treatment, and O is the outcome, what outcome you are going to assess. So in this planet study, let's see what population they selected. So these babies less than 34 weeks gestation, platelet count has to be less than 50 because as I said 25,000 या 50,000 उसको compare करना है, and a brain ultrasound should have happened in the last 6 hours and no major IVH, matlab no grade 3, no grade 4 IVH. So that was the population they selected. So again, my question to fellows, do you think it is the correct population to study? No point in being quiet.
अगर बोलना नहीं है तो चैट में लिख दो you can write on the chat also if you don't want to speak just write down on the chat
box?
yes
Will
sir
I get the chat box?
yes sir you will get chat box
You send me anything, Mohit, hello or something, let me see if it comes. Nothing.
आ रहा हूँ सर भेज रहा हूँ मैंने
अच्छा अच्छा
आया सर
हाँ ऊपर आया ना चैट. Yes. Yes.
नहीं सर nobody has written anything
Okay. So anyway, let's see what they excluded. Oh, क्या हो गया? So these were the exclusion criteria. अगर बेबी को कोई मेजर congenital malformation है, या there is a history of any major bleeding in the last 72 hours, या there is already a fetal intracranial hemorrhage, या कोई immune, autoimmune, alloimmune thrombocytopenia, या फिर lack of injectable vitamin K, parents ने मना कर दिया, या poor prognosis where the baby is really in a very bad shape and they don't think the baby is going to live. So these are the exclusions. So again, I have to keep asking questions. Why do you think immune thrombocytopenia should be excluded?
Hello, sir.
हाँ बोल
हाँ बोलो.
Sir. Because immune thrombocytopenia platelet is not the treatment modality giving platelets.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you give platelet, then also the antibodies will destroy the platelets. That's a different entity. Okay. So are you happy with the exclusions? These babies we should not study in this kind of study?
Yes, sir.
I was happy. So now we have done the population, so we'll come to the intervention. So intervention was platelet transfusion, obviously, and the amount they chose was 15 ml per kilo. Yeah, normally we give 10 or 15. And when the count, so what they did, now suppose आप platelet test कर रहे हो baby का और suddenly it comes 49,000. अब आपको दिमाग में अर्जेंसी लग गई, यार ये तो देना है, कंसेंट तो है नहीं, पेरेंट घर पे बैठा है, कैसे जाके बात करूं. So what they did in this study, they were monitoring the platelets of the baby as per routine, and if any baby touched platelet count of less than 100,000, they approached the family and they took consent at that time. So the baby became eligible for consent if the count was less than 100, but became eligible for randomization and entry into the study when the count reached 50,000. So they approached the family, took consent, family gave consent, they did a head ultrasound, they showed, okay, there is no major bleeding, and they kept monitoring. And then if it reached below 50 or below 20, or depending upon which group the baby was randomized to, so then they gave platelet transfusion. Of course, I mean, if there was any bleeding, तो फिर वो prophylactic नहीं रहा, तो additional transfusion is permitted. Similarly, कोई baby को surgery हो रही है, they say invasive procedure. I'm not sure PICC line डालने को invasive मानेंगे या नहीं मानेंगे, but if surgery हो रही है, तो definitely they gave additional transfusion. People who were assessing the outcome, they were blinded. They did not know कि 50 पे लगा है या 25 पे लगा है. And this was the outcome they were assessing. For 4 weeks after the randomization, death or major bleeding. And this was the definition of major bleeding. So this is really significant bleeding, obviously IVH with more than 50% of ventricles filled with blood, or intracranial hemorrhage, which is needing neurosurgery or causing midline shift. We will all call it a major bleeding. Or pulmonary hemorrhage, जिसमें fresh blood आ रहा है ET tube से with and ventilator settings are going up, pressure, oxygen. Frank rectal bleeding was also taken as major bleeding, but because people may have different opinion about frank rectal bleeding, how to quantify, you can't quantify. So what they did, they analyzed without frank rectal bleeding also when they presented their results. And then other types of severe bleeding, which can be fatal. So obviously the baby died, or baby went into shock, needed fluid or red cell transfusion. So again, question, are you happy with this outcome? Is that what you would like to study when you are studying platelet transfusion? I'm not sure whether people are awake, Mohit. Okay, chat. Yes, good. Oh. Now, what I also want to ask the fellows, what do you understand by, you must have read journal articles, what do you understand by primary outcome versus secondary outcome?
Anyone, even the residents, if they know, they can answer. नहीं बोल रहे सर.
Okay, नहीं बोल रहे. So whenever you start or design a randomized control trial, you also have to calculate how many babies you are going to study. पहले से ही ये नहीं कि जितने आ जाएं उतने ठीक है, या ड्यूरेशन सेट कर दिया कि हम तो 1 साल स्टडी करेंगे, जितने आ गए उतना ठीक है. That is not how it should be done. So you should calculate your sample size, and that is based on your primary outcome. So primary outcome है death या major bleeding, let's say in this case. So they should have, the researcher should have some baseline idea of this outcome in that population in their institute. So let's say 10%. And then you make a hypothesis कि जो भी मैं intervention कर रहा हूँ उससे 10% को मैं with this power, with this confidence, I will bring it down to 5%. And that, if it happens, then it will be considered statistically significant. And then the statistical software will give you a sample size. Okay, you need to enroll 500 babies in each arm or 400 babies in each arm, and then you have to टेक इनटू अकाउंट के सारे बच्चों का हो सकता है हम फॉलो भी नहीं कर पाए, इतना ड्रॉप आउट हो जाएगा, उसको काउंट करो, फिर सैंपल साइज और कैलकुलेट करो, तो 1000 की बजाय 1200 स्टडी करो या व्हाटएवर. सो दैट इज ऑल बेस्ड ऑन प्राइमरी आउटकम. सो व्हेन यू रीड एनी पेपर यू शुड सी कि प्राइमरी आउटकम क्या था, सही था या नहीं था. एंड with any of these studies they will give you a lot of secondary outcomes, which is all like normal neonatal diseases, common diseases, ROP है, NEC है, premature babies में BPD है. But for secondary outcome, even if there is no statistically significant difference, you cannot confidently say that there is because the sample size was not calculated for that secondary outcome. So there may still be some difference, but you just haven't studied enough number of patients. Is that clear, that explanation?
इसके लिए हाँ यस और नो बोल दो भैया. नहीं क्लियर तो सर आपको तुम्हारा दोबारा एक्सप्लेन करेंगे. यस, पीपल हैव रिटन यस.
Yes, good. So these were the results which obviously I have copied from the journal article. This got published in New England Journal of Medicine. So let's look at the primary outcome. So this is low threshold group and the high threshold. Low threshold group meaning 25,000 पे हमने platelet दिया. High threshold meaning 50,000 के नीचे आते ही platelet दे दिया. The outcome is death or major bleeding. So obviously bad things. So bad things happened in 19% of patients when we gave for 25,000 platelet. Below 25,000. When we say no, we will give below 50,000, the bad things happen in 26% of the patients. So what's the take home message? When should we give prophylactic platelet transfusion in premature infants? Guys, oh God, where is that thing?
नहीं है सर, किसी का चैट में भी मैसेज नहीं है. लो थ्रेशोल्ड
आया,
लो थ्रेशोल्ड रिटर्न
आया, low threshold. Okay, that's good. That's what the take home message of the study is. My own screen is getting blocked with this. Okay. So the other thing to see here is odds ratio. So the risk of bad outcome is 1.5 times more if you start transfusing below 50,000. And we call it significant statistically because if you see in the bracket, the 95% confidence interval is all on one side of 1. So if that crosses 1, let's say for example here it is crossing 1, that will be considered statistically not significant. But this is that arrow which what I'm showing is visible on the screen?
It's visible, sir.
Okay, so here we can say that definitely it was significant. So the other things, so these are all the secondary outcomes. So death in the first 28 days, it is statistically not significant, but realistically if you see the number here, it's more towards higher side for the high threshold group. So it seems like there's less number of death in the low threshold group. And then at least one major bleeding episode through in the first 4 weeks, again 11% versus 14%, and again this is all on one side of 1, so that is statistically significant. And then survival without with the bronchopulmonary dysplasia, 54% versus 63. So BPD is more common in the high threshold group. And then coming down on the table, at least one platelet transfusion. Now that is not surprise because you had 53% here. Patient got the transfusion because they got enrolled when they were less than 50,000. But transfusion tabhi mila jab less than 25,000. So only half the patient, it dropped to 25,000. And in the high, this group, it was 90% patients got transfusion. So you may say कि भाई 90 को क्यों मिला, 100 को क्यों नहीं मिला, सबका ही 50 के नीचे पहुंचा, जब भी तो रैंडमाइज हुए वो. बट वो पेपर में लिख रहे हैं कि जब तक वो प्लेटलेट आया तब तक उन्होंने दोबारा काउंट किया और वो 50 के ऊपर हो गया था इसलिए नहीं दिया. So इसमें कोई सरप्राइज नहीं है कि हाई वाले को ज़्यादा प्लेटलेट मिले. अब बाकी मेजॉरिटी ऑफ चीज़ें they are statistically not significant. It seems like there were more babies getting discharged by 38 weeks in the low group. So before I go to the next slide, I would like to ask the audience, why do they think the low threshold group or the group where we were giving transfusion below 25,000, why did it do better? If suppose you are the researcher, you are writing this paper, now you have to write your discussion. So what explanation would you give? Any thoughts? From anyone, including Mohit, unless you have read that paper.
So basically, okay. Right. One of my fellow has written, sir, transfusion related side effects.
Good. Chalo, theek hai. Let's see what the author said. Okay, that's another slide about results. So no difference in serious adverse events. And in their study, about a third of infants were enrolled before 5 days of age. So majority of infants were enrolled basically after 5 days. And they say in their discussion that is not a surprise because इतने low platelet या तो neck में जाते हैं या sepsis में जाते हैं. तो those events are usually unless it is early onset sepsis, those events are usually after 5 days. So discussion mein they say that platelet likely release inflammatory mediators and excessive inflammation is bad. It can predispose to chronic lung disease, bronchopulmonary dysplasia. It can predispose to death, I suppose. Hemodynamic shifts because you are giving extra volume in those babies, which can lead to more fragile germinal matrix. Let me just go back and see what the IVH data was. Did they give any IVH data to us in this slide? They have given bleeding episode, so that is no different. And inflammatory injury to lungs. So those are all the discussion points that unnecessary transfusion, if you give more inflammatory signals to the patient. Some of the things that I would have liked to see, so they did not mention survival to discharge because ultimately, yes, we want 28 days outcome, but ultimately what we want in neonatal trials is how many patients survived and what did they do in long-term follow-up when we see them at 2 years of age or more. Developmentally, are they same or is there any advantage to development? But there is no such information. And also they don't mention about any coagulation profile, PT, PTT, INR, APTT, nothing of that sort. Jabki practically I feel when we have got a baby who is not bleeding, because this is all prophylactic transfusion, this baby is not bleeding and we have platelet which are sort of dropping every day, I would probably like to know कि उसको clotting कैसा है, clotting भी abnormal है, तो maybe this baby is at a higher risk, but there is no such discussion. So any questions or discussion points about this paper? And what do you normally do in your unit in terms of platelet transfusion?
अभी बोलो, कोई ना कोई बोलो प्लीज. What we do, क्या हमारा guidelines क्या है हमारी, what protocol we follow in our unit? Sir, normally like if the baby is stable and everything is fine, hemodynamic is stable, we normally transfuse below 10,000.
Below 10,000, okay.
And if there is a bleeding, we transfuse that even at like if it is 50,000 or above. But active bleeding is there. If it is not, then prophylactic we only give if it is less than 10,000.
10,000. So that 10,000 is based on some data or?
Yes, sir. Some data is there. In this study, they have taken 15,000, but there were other studies, and even this guide now, there were couple of big studies were there, sir, in which they took 15,000 and 10,000.
Okay.
Normally, we take 15,000 is the generally that is cut off, but in term babies we take 10,000. In ELBWs we take 15,000.
15,000. Okay. Sounds good. Let's look at number 2. So I'm presenting 3 studies today. We have finished first study. So the second study is SIFT study, which is speed of increasing feeds trial. So this is, the question is how fast to grade up feeds in preterm infants. So they compared these 2 rates, 30 ml per kilo per day and 18 ml per kilo per day. So इसका background यही है कि what is the main risk of grading up fast? And this is for fellows.
Rachit, NEC.
NEC. And what is the advantage of grading up fast?
Verbally बोल दो यार.
नहीं, वो बॉक्स खुला हुआ है अब तो मेरे सामने.
खुला हुआ है. हाँ, लेकिन लिखा किसी ने कुछ नहीं अभी तक.
नेक लिखा उसने पहले, डिसएडवांटेज तो एडवांटेज कोई भी नहीं लिख रहा है, जबकि एडवांटेज तो और भी सिंपल है.
सर वी कैन इजीली टेपर ऑफ आवर आईवी फ्लूइड रेट.
हाँ, उससे एडवांटेज क्या है आपको प्रैक्टिकली?
We can sift the baby. If it is a normal and no other risk factors are there, we can easily sift the baby to the mother side. So less NICU stay.
Less NICU stay, less duration of PICC line. If suppose you've got a PICC line, less risk of infection, less risk of liver disease, cholestasis, all of that. Now, previous studies, so there have been previous studies on the same subject. And generally उनका conclusion यही है कि faster grading, which is like 30-35 ml per kilo per day, is okay. It as compared to 15 to 20 ml per kilo per day. It reduces time to reach full feeds, and there is no increased risk of NEC. और यही study Cochrane meta-analysis में भी quoted हैं, but साथ में there is always a disclaimer. और disclaimer ये है कि स्टडीज में बहुत एक्सट्रीमली प्रीटर्म इन्फेंट्स, ELBW इन्फेंट्स नहीं थे, क्योंकि ये स्टडीज पुराने जमाने की हैं, उस टाइम इतने सर्वाइवल नहीं था ELBW इन्फेंट्स का. सो दे से कि you cannot really extrapolate that information or take that information and apply it to ELBW babies very easily. So इसलिए ये स्टडी डिजाइन करी गई. दिस वाज अ मल्टी सेंटर स्टडी इन इंग्लैंड, UK, 50-60 हॉस्पिटल्स में. And they said that we will study lots of ELBW babies to show which feeding regime is better. So again, coming to our PICO slide. So this is the population. या तो less than 32 weeks या less than 1500 gram or both. And those who are receiving less than 30 ml per kilo per day feeds. Exclusion. Major congenital malformation. That will usually be an exclusion in almost all the trials. Poor prognosis, where again they don't think the baby is going to live. या फिर unlikely to come for follow-up. Because in this study, they did a 2-year outcome of neurodevelopment assessment. So decide किया पहले से ही कि अरे यार ये बहुत दूर रहता है, आएगा नहीं, इसको मत लो. ठीक है, everybody happy with the population, or would you like any other sort of information? Chalo, let's go. Intervention. Intervention is grading up. at 30 ml per kilo per day or 18 ml per kilo per day when clinicians were ready to start increasing. And then subsequent management of the baby कि कभी बीच बीच में होता है कि एस्पिरेट बड़ा आ गया, ग्रीन कलर आ गया, ब्लडी एस्पिरेट आ गया, अरे बंद करना है, डिस्टेंशन हो गया है, वॉमिट कर रहा है बच्चा, थोड़े टाइम के लिए बंद करना है, कम करना है, ज्यादा करना है, तो वो यूनिट्स इंडिविजुअल यूनिट्स को बोल दिया जो तुमको करना है, जो तुम रूटीनली करते हो वो करो. दे जस्ट वांटेड कि आपका इंटेंशन होना चाहिए ग्रेड अप का, तो एक ग्रुप में वो 30 होगा, एक ग्रुप में 18 होगा. And this was the outcome: survival without moderate or severe neurodevelopmental disability at 2 years of age, corrected age, 2 years corrected. And moderate or severe disability, they had this: visual, hearing, gross motor, cognitive. And one thing which hasn't come is that they had some they didn't do Bailey's testing or any of these scales. They had some parent report, so the cognitive assessment was based on parent report, which I think is a bit surprising. But anyway, again the same question to fellows: are you happy with this outcome for this type of study? Or would you like to study some other outcome?
चुप है सर सब.
Yes. So you did mention neck as the risk. So yes, we know neck can lead to death, and we know neck can lead to neurodevelopmental problems, especially surgical neck. So in a study like this, it's a good outcome कि 2 साल पे आप उसका development भी assess कर रहे हो, survival आपको पता ही है. So okay, and then lots of secondary outcomes. I've just chosen a few to show what kind of things they were studying. So the death is a component of the primary outcome, obviously, because death is also part of the primary outcome. Late onset sepsis, as I said, अगर आप slow grade up कर रहे हो, line ज़्यादा दिन तो रहेगा, TPN ज़्यादा दिन चलेगा, तो sepsis ज़्यादा हो सकता है. Surgical, not surgical, stage 2 or 3 neck, time to full feeds, growth, TPN duration, length of stay, and lots of other things. So time to full feed की ये definition थी 145 ml per kilo per day for 3 consecutive days. And the results. So what are we seeing here? Okay, so I have already explained the previous results table. I would really like some of the audience member to tell me what this results table is showing. Take a stab. Look at the primary outcome and tell me whether there is any statistically significant difference or not in the two groups.
Sir, in according to sir data, sir, there is no difference between the two groups, but the confidence interval is also crosses the 1. So statistically, this is also not significant, sir.
Correct. Absolutely correct. So we can say that faster increment, 65.5%, had a good outcome, meaning survival without disability. And there it was 68.1% in the slower increment. So seems like 3% or 2.5% difference, but it is statistically not significant. And then the component of the primary outcome, survival, again, crossing 1, disability, crossing 1. So the only thing I suppose you will find different is this moderate or severe motor impairment. 7.5% of the faster increment and 5% of the slower increment. And 1.0, so that is the difference, up to like 48% higher risk of motor impairment in the faster group. And this is that PARCA, what I was telling about, parent report of the cognitive score, and no significant differences. Cerebral palsy, no significant differences, none of that. And then some of the other outcomes. And this is very interesting because we would expect, okay, if you are going faster increment, you will reach full feed sooner. Okay, so there is the data about that. Median of 7 days full feeds and median of 10 days full feeds. And interquartile range is 7 to 10 days, 9 to 13 days. So yes, there is, and it is statistically significant. So there is a bit quicker you are reaching full feeds, about 3 days quicker. But what is a bit odd here to me is this figure of 7 days. So we are saying 30 ml per kilo increase every day. And we are saying the baby had to be on that 145 ml per kilo for 3 consecutive days. So yes, the baby at baseline, when they enrolled the baby, is receiving up to 30 ml per kilo per day, right? So from that 30 or 25 or 20, you have to reach 145. And then you have to stay on that amount for 3 days. So 7 days to me seems very short. It seems like बिल्कुल ही कोई हिकअप नहीं हुआ जब वो फीड इंक्रीज कर रहे थे. जैसे उन्होंने लिखा ना तो उसको बेबी को कोई डिस्टेंशन हुआ, ना कोई वॉमिट हुआ, ना कोई लार्ज एस्पिरेट हुआ, नर्स भी नहीं आई सिरिंज भर भर के डॉक्टर के पास कि सिरिंज में इतना मिल्क वापस आ गया है, क्या करें क्या नहीं करें. They kept on increasing. So it seems a bit unrealistic, but that's what the report is. Because practically, like you all work with premature babies, how often does it happen when you have got babies who are 27, 28, 29, 30 weeks and you are grading up every day? Can anybody tell me, like, what is your experience? Does it all go very smoothly?
No, sir. Approximately, sir, in 20 to 30% babies, if it is less than 32 weeks, we deal with the feeding intolerance. Many of the babies feeding intolerance. So there's an increased RT aspirate or increased abdominal girth size.
Yeah. So anyway, the other thing, obviously, you want to know necrotizing enterocolitis. कि भाई faster दे रहा हूँ तो कोई neck तो ज़्यादा नहीं हो रहा है. 5% had neck here, 5.6% had neck here, statistically not significant. Now, can you say that faster increment is safe in terms of neck based on this data? Come on. आंसर क्या यस या नो के अलावा और तीसरा तो कोई है ही नहीं.
No sir, because sir confidence interval is not statistically significant.
हाँ. So can you say कि faster increment से neck नहीं बढ़ता है? Can you say that?
Don't know sir.
Yeah, that's the right answer. You don't know because your sample size was not calculated for neck. Okay, that was the same thing what I was saying earlier. Sample size is calculated for the primary outcome. Neck is a secondary outcome here. So yes, there is no statistically significant difference, but we cannot say that faster increment will not lead to higher neck. For that, we need to calculate our sample size based on that. That may mean we may need to study many more babies, and then only we can say. However, one must look at this number and this number. So you can see they studied nearly 2,800 babies. That's a really large study. Okay, what else? Growth data. I don't think there was any significant difference. And length of stay from trial entry to discharge home, no significant difference, -2 to +2. So what's your take home message? Should we go 30 or should we go 18? Or should we choose some other number? Okay, while you think about it, this is the other subgroup analysis they did. So, you know, they had 2,800 babies. They could make a lot of subgroups out of that. So they did look at the IUGR SGA, small for gestational age babies. This is, so, you know, small babies for gestational age, they tend to carry higher risk of NEC. So that's what they wanted to know. Okay, is there more risk in those babies when we go faster? So this is the data about less than 10 percentile birth weight baby, and this is the number of events, and this is the diamond. So are you familiar with the forest plots, the kind of this which you often see in Cochrane reviews?
Yes.
So here it is the, if the direction is, so obviously if it is crossing the midline, it is statistically not significant. So we can say that based on the IUGR or SGA status, it was not really significantly different, although the trend seemed to be faster, the increment was probably better. The only significant difference is here. So formula milk fed babies, slow the increment is better. And we know formula say risk of neck ज़्यादा है, so it is not a surprise that slow the increment is better for formula fed. But look at the numbers, only 70 babies who got formula only. Now what I found interesting in that paper, they have not talked about donor human milk. Or many of these Western countries have got donor human milk banks, and they use that if mother's own milk is not sufficient to reduce the risk of neck. So I don't know what situation there is. They only had 70 babies who got formula only. So that's a good subgroup to analyze. SGA status is a good subgroup to analyze. And then this. So in this study, as you can see, they had good number of babies who are 28 weeks or less. Because that was the criticism of previous studies on this subject. कि आपने study तो किया, लेकिन ज़्यादातर बच्चे 30, 31, 32 weeks वाले थे. इसमें there is a good number of babies who are 28 weeks and less. And even in those, it seems like faster increment is as good as slower, or slower is as good as faster. So faster, so that line jaldi nikle, length of stay kam ho, infection ka risk kam ho. But the only suppose hitch or problem with was this motor impairment. Moderate or severe motor impairment was higher in the faster group. And if you really go back to that slide, this diagnosis of cerebral palsy, that is also a bit more common in faster increment. And yes, it was not statistically significant because it did cross 1, but just about. I mean, it's predominantly on that other side. So it seems like the motor impairment obviously goes hand in hand with cerebral palsy diagnosis. So I would be a bit worried about faster group. And then they explain why motor impairment was higher in the faster group, whether it was a chance finding, और जब फास्ट देते हो तो ब्रेडी डी सेट्स वगैरह ज्यादा होंगे, एब्डोमिनल डिस्टेंशन होगा, लंग डायफ्राम पे प्रेशर पड़ेगा. So so because of the Brady D-set events, there was more, brain injury and motor impairment. या फिर they were not able to absorb that nutrition when you are giving that fast, and poor nutrition can lead to poor development. The other discussion part is the parents and clinicians were not blinded. It's very difficult. I mean, it's impossible to blind in this sort of study. So they say कि outcome assessor, जिन्होंने 2 साल का development assess किया, they were blinded. So that is fine. But what do the fellows think? Can it lead to bias if parents, clinicians, they are not blinded?
बोलो Rachit.
Sir, if there is no blind study, there are higher chances of bias is there. But in this study,
yes, that's what I'm saying. Bias can happen. How do you think bias can happen in this design now? जब जिन लोगों ने डेवलपमेंट असेस कर रहे हैं दे आर ब्लाइंडेड, और डेथ तो ऑब्वियसली यू डोंट, आई मीन यू डोंट नीड टू बी ब्लाइंडेड, आइदर डेथ इज यस और नो, so that is the primary outcome, right? So how can now, if parents and clinicians are not blinded, how does it still introduce bias?
Maybe,
Suppose
sir,
you are the clinician. Okay. Yeah, speak.
sir, maybe because if in the baby group we are increasing the faster, we are more as a clinician we are more worried because they group tends to have higher side effects. So clinically we are more likely that we monitored the frequently that baby, and
Good.
that's where the bias can generate.
Yes, you're right. So as a clinician, you may diagnose more neck, you may diagnose more feed intolerance, so lots of, because all the other feeding management was left to the clinicians. And as I said, they do not discuss pasteurized donor human milk, so we can't help. So that was my second study. How are we going for time? What time is it? Okay.
चलता है सर, it's fine. It's still we have 10
एक और
15 minutes.
बताता
हाँ
हूँ
सर,
मैं।
please sir, please.
So this study is published in 2020 in Pediatrics Journal, NeoLev. So which anticonvulsant to use for neonatal seizure? So what's your policy in Nirmal Hospital for neonatal seizure? What's the first line anticonvulsant?
Sir, phenobarbital.
Phenobarbital, which is usually the case pretty much everywhere, but people have been worried about phenobarbital for many years because there is animal experiment के उससे एनिमल ब्रेन में अपोप्टोसिस और न्यूरोनल नेक्रोसिस हो जाता है, और ये है और वो है. फिर लॉन्ग टर्म यूज ऑफ phenobarbital, there is data about cognitive impairment in childhood. So people are searching for a better or safer anticonvulsant. And in the last 5-10 years, Keppra or levetiracetam has come up as a neonatal drug, and there is reasonable amount of pharmacokinetic data about dosing and drug level and this and that on levetiracetam. But interestingly, there is not much data about safety efficacy of Keppra. Is Keppra also the trade name in India?
Yes sir. दो हैं सर, दो ट्रेड नेम है. Keppra is also available with the trade name of Keppra.
Okay. So this study, they decided, okay, we will compare phenobarbital versus levetiracetam as the first line anticonvulsant for neonatal seizures. So again, PICO. So this is population. Infants at risk of seizures or suspected of having seizures. So how did they select? So at risk of seizure, perinatal asphyxia, where low APGAR, low cord pH, lactic acidosis, baby is encephalopathic, looking bit obtunded. So they will approach the parents for consent. Or clinically, when there is a suspicion of seizure, they will approach the parents. And the gestation they took was 36 to 44 weeks, less than 2 weeks of age. The reason they did not take smaller babies, they've got somewhere weight also criteria of 2.2 kilo, because they wanted to do some monitoring of bloods, and they said if बहुत ही small होगा तो ज़्यादा blood लेना पड़ेगा, दिक्कत हो जाएगा. So exclusion was any previous anticonvulsant, which obviously makes sense. Elevated creatinine. If seizure is because of a correctable metabolic problem like low blood glucose, low serum calcium, imminent death, and if EEG monitoring could not be started in time. So that is one of the major strengths of this study, that it was all electrically diagnosed seizure. They were not just clinically diagnosed. They were real-time EEG, and not just brains EEG or amplitude integrated or portable EEG. This was full-on video EEG, which they applied in these babies once the parents gave consent. And there are EEG technicians sitting at a remote location, 24 hours, and they will notice the seizure and they will inform the clinical staff that your baby is having seizure, and then that baby gets randomized into levetiracetam or phenobarbital. And that is what the intervention was. So this is HIE at-risk neonate they have taken, or या फिर clinical seizure hai. At that stage, they consent and continuous EEG initiated. And whenever there is electric seizure noted by those technicians who are also assisted by software which can detect seizure on EEG, then they randomized either Keppra or phenobarb. The first loading dose is 40 here and 20 here. And in their methods they described, they wanted to keep blinding the staff. So staff will not know कि वो Keppra का load दे रहे हैं या phenobarb का दे रहे हैं. So उन्होंने ड्रग फार्मेसी से ऐसी ड्रग बनाई कि 40 mg per kg का वॉल्यूम वही होगा जो इस 20 mg per kg phenobarb का वॉल्यूम होगा. So Keppra was like double strength. But by the time you come to the second dose, I don't think they can maintain that double strength. So probably they were not blinded after that. So anyway, 40 दिया, उससे 15 मिनट इन्फ्यूजन गया, 15 मिनट वेट किया, उसके बाद भी इलेक्ट्रिकल सीजर है तो 20 और दिया, फिर 15 मिनट वेट किया, उसके बाद भी नहीं हुआ तो फिर उसको क्रॉस ओवर कर दिया, phenobarb दे दिया 20, उसके बाद 15 मिनट देखा नहीं रुका, इलेक्ट्रिकल अभी भी चल रहा है तो और 20 दे दिया, उसके बाद भी नहीं रुका तो फिर जो इंस्टीट्यूशनल प्रोटोकॉल है उस पर चले गए. और यहाँ उसका उल्टा है, phenobarb 20-20 and Keppra 40-20. Is that all very clear? So by 2 hours, the patient, if still seizing on the EEG, is coming to an institutional protocol. Everybody clear? And then the other methods, they say the allocation ratio is 60-40. So normally, you know, when we do randomized control trial, it is generally 50-50. But here they were so confident. I suppose they were very confident that Keppra will come as better. So they said, we will have more babies in the Keppra group. And this I've talked about. And so now there are two things here. One is the EEG, which was seen in real time by EEG technicians. So these are not doctors, they are just technicians, but they are sitting there, they are telling the unit in real time, okay, there is a seizure, treat it. But then retrospectively, the EEG was reviewed by 2 neurophysiologists. And they then decided that yes, there was a seizure, or no, it wasn't a seizure. And if the two did not agree, then they had to have a third person to act as a tiebreaker, who will then say yes or no. So very robust, strong study design. Now the outcome, what outcome we want to assess? Okay, so that was the outcome. So 24-hour, no seizure on the EEG, and verified by the neurophysiologist. The other secondary outcomes, they just separately analyzed HIE patients and safety things, so a lot of blood tests, serum chemistry, LFT, this, that, and vital signs, because phenobarb can depress blood pressure, can depress respiration and all that. So fellows, is that a good primary outcome to study in a study like this? Answer is either yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why yes? Can there be a better outcome to study?
One can increase the seizure-free interval to 24 to 48 hours or more than that.
But what is your main interest? The baby should survive and have a normal neurodevelopment, right?
Yes.
सीजर 24 घंटा रुका, 6 घंटा रुका, 48 घंटा रुका, उससे मुझे क्या मतलब है? Baby should be healthy in later life, right?
Yes.
So I would say this primary outcome is okay, but it's not the best. I would like long-term neurodevelopment as the primary outcome, survival without disability. So that in fact can be said to be a weakness of this study. So we have talked about strength of the study, the EEG and all that, but this would be, in my view, that would be a relative weakness, that the outcome was very short term. So results. So this was the seizure etiology, and that's pretty standard. When you study near-term babies, half of the cases are HIE usually. That's what they had, and the others were all this heterogeneous group, neonatal abstinence, malformation, infection, blah blah blah. Okay, so that's our table of primary secondary outcome, the main crux of the study. Okay, so last time who had commented on the results? So I want the other person to comment on the result this time.
रुतुल अब तू करेगा, रचित ने पिछली बार बोला था.
So which drug is better?
Sir, phenobarb is the better according to the statistic.
Yeah.
Because about 80% babies have recovered from the 24 had a 24-hour seizure
Yep.
suggestion.
Yep.
And
it's highly significant, as you can see. So the primary outcomes of 24 are seizure free on the EEG, 80% versus 28%. And then they studied HIE patients separately, 90% versus 35%. And if they extended it to 48 hours, it remained significant. So everywhere, phenobarb is better than Keppra. And then if you see that flow chart, okay, so like Keppra group, they had 53 patients, एक loading दिया, 21% को response आया, दूसरा loading दिया और 7.5% आ गए, तो total 28%, not very good. जब phenobarb पे उनको लिया, तो 37 patient में से 14 को response आ गया, second load दिया, तो उन 14 में से 6 को और आ गया. So 20 out of 37 responded to phenobarb. So 28% था Keppra को, क्रॉसओवर के बाद जब phenobarb में गए तो 54% रिस्पॉन्स था. phenobarb ग्रुप में अगर आप देखो तो 30 पेशेंट्स थे, एक ही लोडिंग से रिस्पॉन्स आ गया 70 में और 2 लोडिंग से 80 में. जब उन जो बाकी बच गए 20% पेशेंट, वो उनको Keppra मिला, उसमें से 6 में से सिर्फ एक को रिस्पॉन्स आया. So even as a secondary medication, phenobarb was more effective than Keppra. In terms of safety outcome, as we know with clinical day-to-day practice also, Keppra से generally vital signs पे इतना असर नहीं आता है, लेकिन phenobarb से baby can have respiratory depression, low blood pressure, need of vasopressor, and that was what they found. It was more common with phenobarbital. None of these differences were statistically significant, but as I said, these were secondary outcomes. The sample size was not calculated as per the secondary outcome. So even if they're statistically not different, but the numbers look different, it should be considered. So adverse event on at least one day, 31% in phenobarb group and 19% in Keppra group. Respiratory abnormality adverse event, 26% versus 13%. Vasopressor, 31% versus 16%. So the discussion was that phenobarbital is obviously more effective, but maybe less safe. But when it comes to looking at everything, I think you want effectiveness, first of all. अगर आप कोई ड्रग दे रहे हो, only 30% के सीजर रुक रहे हैं, तो फिर तो कोई खास मतलब नहीं रहा. So I suppose phenobarbital will continue as the first-line medication for the time being. Using a real-time EEG is definitely a strength. They also say that the sooner you treat the seizure, the more effective your drug treatment is. And in key studies जो design थी उसमें obviously it was very soon because EEG tech बैठा है, जब उसको seizure लगा उसने phone कर दिया, आपने treat कर दिया. So that is they were discussing because there was a randomized study comparing phenobarbital and phenytoin published in 1998, and both the drugs were similarly effective, not very effective in about 55%. So, you know, half the patient got effect and the other half did not get the effect. So compared to that, here the phenobarb effectiveness was 80%. So that's much better. So they were explaining that कि क्यों ऐसा हुआ कि तो they say कि हम बहुत timely हमने treat किया because इसलिए जल्दी response आया. Plus they said उस time therapeutic hypothermia was not there. Now we are doing therapeutic hypothermia, so maybe response जल्दी आता है. Anyway, that's all theories. Now the other thing which I suppose, yeah, this is what I wanted to say. So they had, let's see how many patients, total of 30 and 53, 83 patients, right? Because they had to exclude 23 patients after randomization and getting treatment because in 12, neurophysiologists did not agree with the diagnosis. And in 11, they had missing primary outcome measure. So that is a bit of a limitation of this study. And the other limitation, which I said previously, was lack of long-term developmental outcome. Although I think they say that they are going to follow up these babies. So this is interesting, isn't it? Okay, EEG technician thought there was a seizure, but the neurophysiologist said no seizure. And the other interesting thing is, you know how I said there were two neurophysiologists, they had to agree. 22 times they did not agree, and a third tiebreaker neurophysiologist was needed. So it is not only difficult, the EEG reading is not difficult just for us, it is difficult for neurophysiologists also. So that is a bit of a limitation that they had to exclude so many patients. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy for any discussion.
Anybody wants to have any comments?